I messed up our thing. Episode 4 of our wonderful podcast, AoE Discussions with Rom and Wiffle, where we talk all things Age of Empires 1 and a little bit of the others, a little bit of the other stuff, other games, life, food. I don't know. I'm here today joined with by Romwe.
Now, are we really working here? Because I'm seeing an error on the video.
Seeing an error. An error on the video. Really? Hold on.
Yeah, I'm seeing the video's unavailable. Error 5000.
Hold on. I see it. I see it on my end. Okay, we'll restart. We'll restart for the YouTube people.
Oh, now I see it. Now it's up.
Okay, okay.
I just
Uh,
got the notice on my phone.
okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, so we're going to restart for all of you. Well, it's fine. I'll edit this out in the YouTube video, so no one's gonna hear this. That being said, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of AoE Discussions with Rom and Wiffle, the podcast where we talk about all things age and then some other things. We got a nice little set list here to talk about, and I'm joined obviously by Romley. Hello.
Hey guys, how you doing? Hard to believe we're on episode number 4 already. Seems like we just started this thing.
Yeah, right. Time flies. I mean, I think that's kind of the beauty of this. Is it's such it's once a week. It's only like an hour to 2 hours. Not. It doesn't feel like a huge commitment. Obviously, there's stuff that goes on with it behind the scenes, but primarily, it's just I don't know. It just kind of fits between the seams of everything. Um, I don't know. I don't know. So I guess we should just go and jump into it. I guess. So sorry, I just got really distracted. Hello, we did that. So next, did you see the list now?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure you're excited about some of these things, and obviously the big reveal that is when I reveal to you the quote of the day. Uh, but first, I want to talk about something here: the value of voice. You were the one who suggested this topic a couple of weeks ago, so I want to hear your thoughts on that right away.
Well, I think it has enormous potential. Um, but based on our personal experience, it's very sometimes because we've never really, I should say, it's hostile, and as we've played as hostile, we never really did a lot of practicing. Our practicing was in gameplay and everything else, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
our conversations were just have been casual, and then we get into the games. But I think it has a lot of potential to really improve gameplay for the team if you make a conscious effort to do it. But if it's primarily a social interaction vehicle, I still think it has value, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get anywhere near its potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Good.
funny because it's hard to imagine, right? Because communication. So specifically, what we're talking about, guys, in this concept, the value of voice comms is playing Age of Empires in a team setting. The format is currently such that the standard gameplay by nearly everybody is going to be just the only way of communicating is typing into the chat, typing in to their teammates and opponents to communicate, right? But as soon as you add in, voice chat, at least in our experiences, because Rum and I we've played with a team hostile, we've played and we still play, obviously, less competitively nowadays than we used to be, but we still play a bunch, have some fun with it. Uh, and we take the game seriously, of course. So that means the comms for us are always filled with tactical, important information, and it just feels it seems so much harder to play the game in a team setting now that I've had both sides of it. it just gets, I feel like it's so much harder to be on the other side of it now without any way to communicate with them. I just feel so much more lost.
Well, I think that that there's value in a couple dimensions.
Hmm.
One that probably people aren't thinking about right now is just the value in terms of enjoyment. I mean, to me, the game with voice comms is so much more enjoyable just to
Mm.
play. I mean, it's the same with watching casting. Like I've joined several of the people that cast their games and stuff, and like when you do, when there's a lot of conversation that's pertinent to what you're doing, it really amps up the enjoyment in the game. So I think there's that aspect of it, and certainly if you're playing with a team you're familiar with and friends, it makes a lot more fun. In terms of the performance of the team, when I've seen voice used for that specific purpose, it really makes a significant difference. We just, like you say, we just not really seriously competing, so we don't use it that way. It's kind of
Mm.
funny because in a lot of sense, when we play, the voice tends to be reactive. Oh, I'm getting rushed, or I need wood, or I need food, or
The
whatever. Because
countdown.
right, or the countdown, they're on countdown. I got 10 bills, nine, eight, uh, that whole thing. But
uh,
if you think about its potential, if you were really serious about it, where you could strategize and you could say, okay, the standard plan is flanks rush or defend against a rush, and pockets, boom or whatever, and then react to it. If you were to have
right.
a team captain that was sort of call the shots, and now that I think about it, it brings to mind, Winston, when we used to do co-op,
Yeah.
and in co-op, it's not just a fun sort of nice thing. It is absolutely critical
Necessary. Yeah.
yeah, because otherwise you're stepping all over each other. And
Right.
when we first were learning to play together in co-op, it's a little frustrating in
Well, yeah.
terms of trying to do.
Well, yeah, frustrating for both people in different ways, or, depending on the person, frustrating in completely opposite ways, right? Opposite reasoning and stuff. Because so just pulling it back to just the team play, right? I vividly remember several 2v2s that I've played with Memo where we've been like trying, and our communication, I feel just like it's elevated when we're both like really being competitive and like working together in a 2v2 and trying to win. That's been some of the most rewarding team play for me, right? Whereas I agree with you that like in the 4v4s when we got all the hostile boys in the house and stuff and we're just hanging out, that's certainly more fun, because we're able to like kind of exclaim things to each other and the joy of the surprises and the letdowns and the all the all the up and downs that is an Age of Empires game. Your small victories, your small defeats to your big victories and your big defeats, you get to share them together, which is why that's such a fun environment to be in. And fun because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And when it goes well, you can really rejoice because sometimes it feels like you've won the lottery when all four people do well in your team, so much that you feel it's funny if one of your teammates isn't raging, was it even a good game?
Yeah, probably not. That's a good point.
Because at that point everybody won, right? Because if all four people on your team win, then it was an imbalanced match. Maybe, I don't know, or you all just played well. I don't know how you say that. You're all on point. I guess
Yeah,
you have to
but
feel that.
we had talked when you had brought up maybe a couple podcasts ago, or maybe it was last week. I don't know, about setting goals,
Right.
and we had talked about that and said that things that are difficult um,
Hmm.
are a lot more fulfilling. You feel more accomplished when you do something challenging than something simple. So when you play one of those
Right.
games against a good team and it's a back and forth and it's tough, it's a
Hmm.
lot more exciting. And then when you win in the
Hmm.
end, it just feels like a true victory.
Right.
And so certainly, um, voice comms have the ability to give an edge between two teams that are closely matched. But I can't recall a time when I played in a voice match when I didn't really with the rest of the team members or people that I didn't regularly talk to.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it may be a detriment in that environment if you had a pickup group and you say, "Hey, let's all just get in this Discord," but they've never really chatted as a team before. Maybe it's actually a negative in that case.
Yeah, and you could, and if you don't want, I think a big thing about if you're doing that, if you're joining a team Discord like kind of impromptu, like you said, pickup, and your goal would be to improve the gameplay, right? Like improve the team play aspect of it. I feel like if you're not familiar with the person, you could quickly run into the issue of, conflict, right? And that can quickly become a detriment, right? And if you have two people who start arguing over Discord, it's certainly not, or Skype or whatever you use, TeamSpeak, Ventrilo. There's so many like of these server type based voice communications, and heck, a landline, I did that with my friend back in the day. But that being said, um, like it could be very detrimental, like if there is like friction, and I feel like we've certainly had friction, but I don't know if it's ever been like actually detrimental or just like in the moment, disagreements that are quickly resolved. But like you said, if you're not friends with them, if you don't talk to them a lot, then those resolutions don't come as cleanly and as easily. There's like a basis of respect, kind of, potentially. I don't know. Depends on the
Yeah, I mean,
people.
well, the worst thing you could do is end up having two people on a team having a debate, live while you're playing the game.
Keyboard war.
Yeah, yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Someone
I
who
mean, so,
types all game. You don't really want
yeah,
to be in voice with them.
and the effort to have to type it,
Hmm.
keeps those things, kind of brief. But if you had an open com channel, I mean, it's all
Verbal
good.
abuse.
I do think it would be fun though. I mean, if you were going to play competitively in teams, again, on one of the previous podcasts we talked about,
Hmm.
trick or treat was last week. We talked about clans, you know, a trick or treat, and we both thought for sure it's a treat.
Hmm.
And if those teams were to play together with a voice channel and get used to it, I think it could make for just that much more exciting gameplay.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure many people. I don't get the impression that too many people actually use voice comms playing DE.
Yeah, there not many that I know of. I know a couple other people who've tried it and use it every now and then. I think that new team you were talking about, who's it? It's Baltoon and
Baltoons.
Hot Chins and Frizzle, right? Is that the group? Am I wrong on this?
Yeah, I think it was Frizzle, Baltoon, Hutchins.
One other person.
Yeah,
Regardless, though, I think I read mention of them somewhere that they were trying to use voice comms, which is a big gameplay. That's a game changer right there, right? As soon as a team starts doing that, I feel like they become a lot more serious. It's a commitment, right? Because as soon as you start talking to someone, there's almost like a responsibility from the players then to like build that rapport, build the friendship. We could be seeing a new team there, which is I'm really excited about. That's always fun.
oh, for sure, definitely.
Well, Age of Empires 2 is around the corner, coming out November 14th. The beta, not the beta, the full release is scheduled for November 14th as it stands currently. I know you caught a bit of my stream today, a little bit this morning. So do you have any impressions on it so far?
Well, I don't play the game, so I mean, I've watched a few. I had played it many many years when it first came out, so I have I would say very very cursory exposure. But I will say, when I was watching the graphics, so you know how I am with graphics. The first thing
Mm-hmm.
I assess a game by is just how does it
Right.
look, and when I was watching you do it first, I thought, yeah, those graphics they look better, but they didn't look dramatic. And then when you click the little super button today
Mm-hmm.
that kicked the graphics into overdrive, and then
Yeah.
you could just zoom in to look at whatever individual apples or whatever they were in a
That
barrel,
was nuts.
watching the shutters flutter back and forth and the
That blew my
flags
mind.
and the it was stunningly beautiful game, stunningly beautiful. In fact, the combat, I don't think you saw it, but I said I could never be good at that game because I would be mesmerized by the
Mm.
graphics in it.
Yeah, it's funny though. when we look about I feel like we could. I feel like so this segment here on Age of Empires 2. I feel like we're just gonna. I think I just need to like detox and talk about it because it's been a lot's been happening in that world recently for both me and everyone revolved around the Age 2 world. It's an exciting time. And there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to unpack at least. Akin to a trebuchet, there is much to unpack. Ugh, there's so much to talk about that I don't even know where to begin. Um, let's think. The first thing, the first thing that we could talk about here would be the. Hmm. I'm drawing a blank. I'm drawing a blank. I just had a big brain, brain freeze, but not because I'm cold. No. So okay, well, an easy thing to talk about at the start here is that I'm hosting a show match on Saturday between Tato and Doubt. So be sure to catch that live. I'll be casting it here on this channel, on H2 Beta, which is going to be really exciting. $150 on the line. The players going at it. I'm really excited to cast that. I think that'll be really fun. My history with the game is I used to play H2 back in the day, a long time ago, AOC days and beyond. I didn't play much in the past like 5 years. I've been kind of focused on other stuff, college and Age One actually recently. The past year has been very dominated by that right now, which has been great. But casting some H2 stuff just to get my feet wet in it, see what that's about because I'm excited about that, and I have no idea how it's gonna go, no idea what the reception will be, and I'm excited to cast some of it though. I think it'll be fun. That being said, Age 2 is a vastly different game from Age 1. And I'm sure if Age 2 were to become like an item that we you the like a content item that I bring up a lot on this channel, then we could be seeing it be more we could see more discussions with it in the future on this podcast. I'm not sure about it right now though, because again, I don't know. Our viewership is probably primarily based around Age 1 right now, as that is the core of my audience. That's fine, fine. So I think we can keep it kind of brief on Age 2. Actually, you don't have any other
Yeah, I'm
thoughts,
probably
do you?
probably no, not really because I don't know the game that well. So um,
Yeah, maybe
not
maybe
really
next
any
week.
in
Maybe
depth.
next week I'll talk about like the key differences. Maybe I'll try to like parse a list and kind of think about the differences because at this point I have extensive experience on both games, so I think I could I think I could bring up a good list. So I'll bring that up next week. We'll come back to this. So just keep in tune. Keep in tune with H2 and its definitive edition. I'm really excited about it. Again, November 14th, the game goes live for you to download and play. And I cannot wait to see what comes from that. I think I think one thing, if you're an Age 1 fan or an Age 1 player, like you might be if you're listening right now, I would say that even if you never touch Age 2, you should be rooting for its success because it is one umbrella company, kind of a overhead, right? It's the Age of Empires studio, right? So their success is the community's success, and Age 1 will only flourish if it is like kind of unquotes under the umbrella of Age 2. It's I think it's important for us all to spread that like positivity around the games rather than spread negativity. I don't know. Not that I've seen negativity. I'm just going on a tangent here, kind of
Well,
rambling.
you and I've talked about this before in terms of the interface. But building on your statement about being an umbrella company, single company, I kind of feel like it'd be really cool if they had a single lobby system for the
Mm.
Age of Empires family of games. Now we have Age 1, we've got Age 2, we're going to have an Age 4 coming out. Um, but to me, it would be neat if you had an umbrella one where you
Yeah,
plug into it.
I love that you just skipped over Age of Mythology and Age of Empires
Y-
3 just
Yeah, yeah,
without even like that you paused for a second. You paused for just long enough for everyone to think, Age of Mythology, Age of Empires 3, and then you're just immediately to Age 4.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
such a
Just skip over.
camp. There are so few people I know personally that actually enjoy playing all four games. Like I don't even think I do, and I like all four games that currently exist, and I probably will really like the fifth. But like playing all of them like all the time, I don't know. It's like each one has its own grouping, and I feel like there's a large group of people that like age one and two, or two and one they agree with, and then mythology and three just kind of fell off their wagon. Anyway, what were you saying? I just
Yeah,
interrupted you.
yeah. So that's what I did. They just disappeared off of my radar. But um,
You were saying
if you
the
had a
games,
single
yeah.
if you had a single user interface when you go in, you say, oh, okay, here are the games, and here are the, if you could see like with Discord or something, you see here are all the people that are logged in or currently active in the game, and
Right.
here are the ones that are color coded as friends of yours that so you can see with a glance, or maybe they're bundled together somewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
then you could say, oh, okay, and then there's a little tag. If somebody's actually in a game, it shows a little tag, little icon that says, oh, they're currently in an age one game or an age two game or whatever. And then you can search for the lobbies, look around the games that are active, which ones are age one, which one are age two. And one, I think it would bring
Mm-hmm.
the community closer together. I think it would probably encourage people that don't play the other game, age two people, to say, oh, look, I know some of these people. Oh, Tato or Dowd or,
Mm-hmm.
ACCN. These people that I know, they're over there playing. They're playing age one DE. Oh, maybe I should just give it a try, and vice versa, right?
Right.
You
Yeah.
can have, you can have newbie lobbies, beginner lobbies. You could have advanced. You could, have an ELO system, an ELO system that works like it does in age two. I mean, er, I, I don't know. I just think that that would be really cool. And then when four comes out, it's just simply an enhancement to
yeah,
the existing interface.
it just falls in, it just falls into place, right?
Falls into place,
That's
right?
the dream, isn't it? Like I wonder if they're considering something like that. I kind of understand what you're saying, like a beyond a launcher, right? Because if you think some game series, like I don't know if you've ever played Total War or other RTS games, like Total War is a game that has many series, but it's all one company making one style of game, and everyone knows it's a serial game, right? So when you launch one of them, there's a little launcher that pops up right from Steam or whatever platform you're playing it on. And then from there, it shows you all their game titles, right? Really cleanly laid out, and it highlights the ones that you own and have downloaded, so you can easily choose between them. Then you just click launch, right? And it didn't matter which one you had started up in Steam. So I kind of understand that you're thinking of it even beyond that. You're looking at, you load up Age of Empires as a entity, not a single game, as an entity, Age of Empires. And in it, all the games that you have access to, all the lobby is just right there, easy filters to manage. None of the I feel like there's a bit of bloatware kind of with their lobby system. Like there's a lot of how do you say, there's a lot of filters that just seem unnecessary. Like I don't like I can see how someone might need it, but at the same time I feel like the filters should primarily be focused on like the absolutely most necessary things, right? And a lot of people just want to filter by all. They just want to see everything and then hide all those so they can see more lobbies. I don't know. I think what you say has a lot of validity though. Like if you just had one lobby system, just easy to tab through or see every game of age.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's. I don't know if you watch all these. The Marvel superhero movies. But when they
Hmm.
first started coming out, they were all just individual releases, and
Right.
then they sort of got this idea that it was the superhero, it was the Marvel,
Hmm.
universe, and
Right.
they started having characters from one show up in another one, and then they brought them all together under the same umbrella. I don't know whether you like those kind of movies or not, but I think it enhanced, it was these one of these 1 + 1 = 3 scenarios where if you do like that kind of thing, I think it made it
Right.
more interesting. And I feel that's a missed opportunity with the age game set to
Mm,
pull your community together. And even if e- just and this would never happen exactly, but I mean, even if you said, okay, all the age 1 people, they just do their age 1 thing, and the age 2 people do their age 2 thing, just the social interaction possibilities um,
right.
is beneficial. But anyway, I know it wasn't really a topic, but every time I see H2 and DE, that's what I keep thinking about is an umbrella UI lobby system that is really well thought out. And it's funny because when I think back 20 years ago, the MSN one was
Hmm.
actually quite good. And I think the Voobly one was a derivative of that. And if you sat down and you really focused on it like you do um, the
Yeah.
elements of a game itself and game balance and the types of sieves and the graphics and all of the thought that goes into that. I think spent a little bit of time on this uh, lobby user interface system. I just think it could really add enormous value, especially now that they're
Right.
going to have 3 active games.
Right. Yeah, and planning. Yeah, they're planning. No, they're planning four right now, right? H1, H2, H3, and then H4.
Well, I skipped over 3.
Because Age of Empires 3 is getting a definitive edition. I don't know. I don't want to speak poorly on that because I always support anything the devs do. I think they're great. That's not just me catering to them or anything like pandering. I truly I have a lot of faith in this new team that they've put together. Microsoft has and the Forgotten team. So I mean in terms of the definitive editions, like bringing fantastic visuals and like what they were intended to do was bring fantastic visuals to the game, right? Like kind of update the look to be modern into something that could carry into the future for a while. I think they've done it. The wow factor on H2. I don't know if you guys caught my stream earlier today. I was streaming some of the beta for H2 and just wow. It looks so good and it performs like there's some hiccups here and there, but for the most part my experience has been great with it, honestly. And I think the current situation for the beta is kind of like Age 1. There are certainly places where it needs more work, but they've been working on Age 1 still. We had a patch just last month and a half ago on Age 1 and it's been out for a year and a half now. So clearly they're kind of digging in and getting into these details that probably take a lot longer to fix than we think. Like your lobby idea is obviously very good and would be great. I don't think there's anyone there that would disagree with you on it, but obviously the production behind that is probably quite extensive, I could imagine.
It could be, but I think a lot of the true value of it can be done with relatively small effort.
Right, right.
I mean,
For like a
it's
company like Microsoft, is
yeah,
what you're
right,
saying.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I see you. Yeah, age two. That's way on its way. And the show match. Don't forget the show match. We'll be hosting a show match here.
I do
Um,
want to see that. I do want to see the show match. That should be great. I mean, that'll give me exposure to the new game. Plus, uh, Tato's a blast to watch. I want to see how he does. It'd be great if Dow came back into Classic Cup tournaments again. Um, Chemistry between Tato and Dow because they're longtime friends and
teammates.
co-opetition in some ways because they're on the same team, but then they also battle each other, in matches and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but their chemistry is fabulous. When
Hmm.
we used to watch them play um, Memo and who else? They played
Me,
Zeta quite
Zeta.
a
Yeah,
bit,
yeah, yeah.
you and several of the people, and they would cast the games. And it was fabulous, and they're
Hmm.
bantering back and forth and talking about you know, what do I do? What do I do? What I got scouts coming at me. What? And the other guy said, well, Bowman, you got to be. Anyway,
Yeah,
so it should be interesting
yeah. It'll be
to
fun.
see that.
It'll be really fun. I'm excited. I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna cater my casting towards my H1 audience. I'm gonna explain things that I think need explaining. Maybe I'll repeat myself. I don't know. I tend to avoid repeating myself when I cast. We'll see how that goes though. You know how it is. Like I say something and then I realize that like an hour later, it wouldn't hurt to repeat it, but at the same time, because I don't know how I'm gonna handle all this, right? Because I don't know what to expect from H2. I don't know if there's gonna be a lot of questions during the cast, or what if when I'm casting H2, all my viewers just end up being H2 players, right? And they don't need the explanations. There's so much guesswork to do with. I'm excited because it's a new venture for me, right? Because I've been casting
Well,
H1 for months now, so I've kind of gotten into a rhythm with it. This is upsetting all that rhythm potentially. I mean, this could be a one-time thing. This could be more. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I'm hopeful though.
and casting is a real activity, obviously, as well with the game. I mean, people probably don't they think it's all about the game, but when you're casting, you're trying to react to what they're doing and anticipating everything else.
Mhm.
So this will be interesting to see how you're casting an H2 game to an H1 audience. Uh, how that flows given what happens, right? Because you're going to be trying
Mhm.
to explain what they're doing, but also
Exactly.
explaining it with the idea set that maybe a lot of people don't understand.
Mhm.
Even forget nuances; they just don't even understand some of the basics, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's true. True.
So I'm just going to go ahead and ask this anyway now because probably people are wondering. But do you also have some Classic Cup matches that you're
Oh,
expected to be nailed down for this week?
Oh yeah, so coming up this weekend, so this is the weekend of the 9th and 10th. We have matches coming your way. Scheduled to be announced, but one thing we do have is in Age 1, we have our show match on Sunday between Hostel and Vietnam Legends. ACCM and Cool will attempt to beat Memo and Iron Steel at 15 GMT on the Sunday. $100 prize to the winning team. I'm very excited to cast that. That'll be here on this channel, and I'm sure Romley will be there to co-cast.
What say the time
15
again?
GMT. That's going to be your 10 a.m.
Oh, 10 a.m. Yeah, I can make it. I can, I can get up by 10 a.m.
Oh yeah, of
Something
course
like
you can. Of course you
that.
can. That'll be great, right? Because we're now GMT -5. So guys, if you are listening to all of our times in GMT and you are in the US, you probably just experienced daylight savings. So make sure you recalibrate your timing. But that being said, I think we can dive into our next topic here. What do you think?
Yeah, sure.
I think we've kind of we've talked enough about H2. I don't want to go into the details, right? Like I don't think it's there's so many resources currently available to people. If you just look, so many insanely talented people in the H2 community have made fantastic videos describing the new release and what to expect. The new civs, the new balance changes, what like all those things. So I don't think I there's nothing I can really add to that conversation at this point, other than my excitement for it, and you know, that's about it. So I think, yeah. So moving back to Age 1, back to our kind of realm, a tiny kingdom, if you may. Uh, this is a thought I had the other day, um, but without seeing my obvious indication here. What do you think the best siege unit is in the game?
Uh, so I'll answer that. But what's the Dash Hoplites? Given that that's an academy,
Can you just answer?
it's okay. Okay. First of all, I don't think there is a best. It depends on the situation, what you're fighting. But I'm going to
Mm,
answer it by the one that I love to have, and I think you know the answer to this.
Hellies.
Shocked if you don't. I love helis, and
Heliopolis. Yeah.
they are just fabulous.
Hmm.
They're like machine guns. And if you get the full heli, meaning that you have a sieve that
Hmm.
has ballistics with it, and you get the helis, um, they're just tremendous. And the only true counter to them, if you have them in enough numbers, I mean, horse archers are pretty good and that kind of thing, but the true counter is catapults because they'll splatter a bunch of them at once. But I just love them. They're great for taking towers down. They're great for taking buildings down, but they shine when it comes to armored Ellie's. They shine when it comes to taking down the hoplites.
Scythe.
Oh yeah,
It's
they
so
just
fun.
blow through
Heli
Scythe.
versus an army of Scythe. It's literally a race. It's a race. It's like, can the Scythe close the distance? Because as soon as they start chopping away at those Helis, man, those little wheels just start destroying Helis.
But if you're smart, you stick them on a hill, and
Oh,
they're just shooting down on the hill.
it's
I mean,
one
they
shot,
can.
right? Isn't it one
Yeah,
shot
it's.
or two shot?
I
It's two
mean,
shot.
at the rate they fire, though. I
Hmm.
mean, I mean, they're just fabulous. So I like them. You don't see them that often, though. I mean, you certainly see catapults a lot more than them. And catapults have their certainly their role to play, but I find that they're so frustratingly easy to be killed. You
What,
know,
catapults or Helis?
catapults.
Hmm.
No, not helis. See, the thing about the catapults is it's easy to dodge. You cannot dodge heli shots. You can dance all you want, but if they have ballistics and helis, there's no dodging it. They
Right.
just hit you. But with the catapults, you watch that arc of the flaming ball, and you get out of the way. Unless you're like a really slow moving hoplite or something, you're going to get hit. But most of the units they kind of get out of the way if they're actively managing them. And then of
Mhm.
course we got a lot of them. You're talking about 10 catapults and they're spraying everything. Well, that's kind of a different situation. But
Yeah, but by the time you have 10 catapults, I always make this argument is efficiency and mass isn't a proof of power, because if you actually, I don't always talk about this. I just made that sentence up right now and I'm very proud of it. Efficiency and mass isn't a proof of power because in Age of Empires, because if you have the opportunity to mass something, it doesn't matter what you massed. At that point, any unit that you could have made, right? Like I always said, that when people talk about Centurions or like armored Ellies, or when I talk about Ellie archers, I always talk about how like it's the best late game combo, right? But by the time you're there, does it really matter what unit you made? Right? Like there are so few situations in which you're iron and your opponent is iron and you're both on equal eco, no one's taken significant losses, and you're actually about to have an even resource fight. That never happens, right? Uh, even resource fights only happen at the start of Tool, in one-on-ones at least, in the start of Tool, and then maybe early bronze if you had some weird stuff going on. But usually, someone gets an advantage. They bronze first, the resources skyrocket, they win the game. That could take them to iron, but it's very rare to get a situation in which both players kind of like are completely even until the point that they're deciding between helis and heavy cats and armored ellie. You know what I mean? Like when is that ever? Do you see what I'm getting at?
yeah, it's true. But you do see a lot of games where there's an
Team
imbalance
games, yeah.
in the team games where there's an imbalance. Like you could say, well, um, somebody decides to focus on going iron, and the other two guys, the flanks on your team or whatever, they're stuck in some. One might be in tool, one might be in bronze, and you make it to iron, and then now you have the decision on what to do because it's still a close game by definition. I mean, you're otherwise everybody be hitting iron at the same time, but it's one of those tough games. It's a team game, and you hit iron, and what are you going to focus on? And of course, it depends on the game in terms of what kind of units you need. But in terms of the siege unit, if you feel you need one, either type can take down walls. Either one can take down towers. If you take down towers with helis, you got to have more of them so that you don't take damage to, you know, a big tower.
Hmm.
But it doesn't take a lot of them, and they can really blow through. I don't know. I just think they're fun to play, so I
So
love them.
helis is your answer to the best unit in
Helis
the
is
game.
fun. Yeah, that's my
So
best.
so you took it literally, which is fine. I took it siege units. I think there are four. You think there are only catapults and Helepolis or ballistas. I think that you should add melee elephants and hoplites to that list of siege. I think I think they're effectively siege units, and They have great efficiency against units, but their counters are similar, right? Anything with speed, maneuverability, certain conversion techniques, right? Ranged are ranged units can generally deal okay with them. Um, and they pose less of the negative things, right? Like you can't dodge an elephant. Like you know what I mean? You can avoid it, like you can avoid a catapult shot, but you can't dodge the hit. There's a level of inevitability, which is why when it comes to like Armadillos and Centurions, what would you rather have to wipe someone's entire base? Right? Because that's what I
Well,
think Siege does. Siege wipes. That's the point of it, right? Like in Age of Empires games, Siege is the thing that destroys, right? Right? It's not technical. It's not about precisely what you're fighting, although there is some of that in this game. There's not like it's just the thing that kills everything.
well, the siege
Buildings
units are specialty
included.
units, though, and the other ones are generalist units as well. I mean, they're great at taking buildings and walls and towers
Then
down.
what's the point? But you just talked about how good catapults are at taking walls and towers down.
Yeah, what does mean? They're a specialty unit. So, like, okay, if you
I
take
view
take
hoplites as a supreme specialty unit. They do everything well, right?
yeah,
They kill
but then it's
buildings
not a
faster
specialty
than
unit. It's a generalist unit.
yeah. That's the point. That's kind of what I'm getting at. You agree? So
Okay,
it's Bronze
so
Age. It's Bronze Age, and your opponent just invested 700 resources into killing your base. What are you more scared of? 3 stone throwers or 25 hoplites?
why do we only get 3 stone throwers? But
700 resources. Or I guess it will Greek hoplites. Yeah. Or 25 Greek hoplites. We're talking resource cost here.
that can't be right. Oh,
180.
you're talking about the upgrade cost plus
No,
the
just hoplites and just stone throwers.
what's a hoplite cost?
Like 36 food and 40 something gold on Greek.
And what's the catapult's 180?
And 80. I mean,
Yeah, they're
roughly.
expensive.
It's rough. That would roughly. I'm just did. That was quick math. I mean, maybe
Well,
I'm off by
even if
5.
it was forget that. Just say which would you rather have? 3 hoplites or 3 catapults? I'd rather have 3 hoplites,
I'm
right?
talking. No, I'm talking about your enemy knocked on your door, right? Or they got in. Even worse, they're already in. Like, because the stone throwers, they're gonna get in either way. The hoplites, they get in quick anyway, right? Like, I don't know. It's like,
Well,
like
three
you
stone
always talk.
throwers isn't. But there's three stone throwers isn't really a threat to anything. I mean,
That's the
you get some
point.
fast
They're so
guys and they kill it.
expensive, and they're not a threat to anything. What kills your base faster? You can run the vills away from both, right? There's no fear of you losing everything to any of these armies, right? 25 hoplites, you just run away, right? What wipes your base faster? Your empty base.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, 25 hoppies is just
What
gonna.
takes down your what takes down your walls faster though? That's a good question.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the wall. I'm sure the hole in the wall happens with the catapult with
Mm-hmm.
concentrated fire on one
Right,
spot. It's
right.
clearly gonna, as opposed to like 3 hoppies. But like I said, I mean, the siege throughout the entire game, it is a specialty unit, and it has to be designed for certain. I mean, if somebody is ravaging your base with a bunch of scythes and you have hoppies, if the guy is microing his size, he's gonna kill all your stuff and not lose much because he'll just dance around them. But if you have a bunch of Helepolis in your base, they don't have to move. They just have to be stationed, like
Mm-hmm.
a turret, that can just mow anything that comes within range.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm getting at is this was a baiting question, and you're shutting it down very nicely. So I'm not what's it called? I'm not upset about this at all. I'm just saying I think hoplites are the best siege unit in the game. I think if you consider the specialty of siege to kill buildings, I see your point about Scythe, right? I see your point about Hellies versus Scythe. Hellies are good against units specifically, but I also think hoplites, like in a forced combat, right? In forced combat, hoplites also do well, right? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you made the example about how the Scythe can just outmaneuver, but I mean at the same time, the South could outmaneuver the Hellies in just a more roundabout way. It would, in theory, they'd protect you better. They have a larger radius, but at the same time, as soon as you start spreading out the hop, if you spread out your hoplites, you're less susceptible to divide and conquer. If you spread out your helis, I mean, they have, like all ranged units in this game, they have value in mass, right? The more there are in a concentrated spot, the harder it is for the scythe to win, right? So the scythe have to attack with more and more, right? But if you look at it from hoplites would just be beating them if they fought. So Scythe avoid hoplites and heli, a massive heli, in different ways. So I don't know. All I'm trying to say is that I think if I had one way to bust into my opponent's base, it wouldn't be with Siege. I think I would pick hoplites over Siege,
Yeah,
especially in the Bronze Age.
I think if you're stuck with an either or, I think you always take the generalist item and never the specialty item. But I think the most powerful, and let me use a Withwolf phrase, the most
Impactful.
impactful,
Are you
right,
gonna say that?
is going to be the combination. It's like, I use this analogy a lot. Do you know what gunpowder is made up of? It has three components.
Niter? No.
So it's coal, sulfur, and saltpeter. So those three
Hmm,
items are what you make gunpowder with, but they have to be blended in the right proportion. If they're not blended in the right proportion, it's just a powdery mess, right? But if it's
really?
blended in the right proportion, you have gunpowder and it's explosive. And so think about, for example, if I said, well, you can have one unit, do you want a priest or do you want an elephant? Okay, the priest is a general, is a specialty unit again, and the elephant's a generalist unit. But if you have 5 or 6 elephants and you add a priest to the mixture, now we're getting somewhere. If you
Hmm.
have a bunch of elephants and I can put a few Helepolis in there, right? Or
Right.
a
Yeah.
catapult in there, right? If your hobbies are trying to get through a Babylonian wall and the guy's got copies on the other side, you can take a lot of damage. But if you have just one catapult in the back with the range, it's going to solve your copy problem on the inside of the wall. So it's when you take a generalist army and you overlay a specialty unit in it, it makes it a lot more effective in aggregate. And so that's why I don't like that you get this or that.
Right, right. I see what your point is on that. I really do. That's an interesting take. I didn't think that through all the way, I guess. Well, I mean, now we have. That's the point of the podcast, right? Um, the point of the podcast. So that's a really interesting take. It's kind of the benefits of combined arms fighting, right? Using multiple army units effectively is better than using one effectively.
And a lot
In
of
theory.
times when you watch these games, you see people that they they do the following, and I'm guilty of all these same things too. Because when you're in game,
Hmm.
it's harder to do the right things than it is to think about them. But
Right.
when I had the opportunity to watch the games and co-cast with you and play the games, reflect on them, I know what the right things to do are, but not necessarily actually doing them. But
Right.
what you see so many times, and I'll say it, it's sort of the GP plus level. You see it less at the true expert level, but
Well, we'll see.
they'll say, "Oh, I have a Syrian, so I'm just going to go all CA," or I'm Minnow, so I'm just going to wait until I get my copies, and I'm going to go all copies, and et cetera, et cetera, right?
Right.
Um, these civilizations have other units which would complement those really, really well, and the instead of just keep throwing the same unit out there, if you already have
Hmm.
30 CA,
Yeah.
well, then you might be better off having some other units in there. Maybe some. catapults, in there are going to get you through the walls because the CA can't get through the wall. And if the guy's far enough in, then all of a sudden now you have this death ball that has a key to the door as well, right?
Right.
If you're going to go all, cav, maybe a few compies or CA if you get them in there is a good way to go because now you have something that the camels are very susceptible to. But I see so many times people saturate their army with the same unit over and over again, and it's the one that Civ is particularly has an advantage with, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because so many times it feels like that's the best way to play. I wonder, is that a fault in the players?
I
Like,
think it's an
because I do
easier
that.
way to play. It's easier way to play. It's not better.
Are you sure? Well, if easier, if easier makes you do better, if doing the harder thing makes you do worse, then easier becomes better.
I disagree with that.
Well, are we talking about potential or reality? Talking about hypotheticals or
No,
what's
I think
fact, right? In
um,
what if you're in a game and you make all the units in the world and say this is technically the best army, and you can't, and nobody could ever pull it off, then is it really the best army,
okay,
right?
so the example of that is your game the other day, which was a fascinating game, the Oasis game.
Yeah.
You're on one side, Memo was on the other side. It was a team game. Both after the game, it was fascinating because both you guys, so you guys are on opposite sides, and Memo's like, I wanted to quit after 20 minutes in the game, and you're like, no, no, I wanted to quit, and you guys were on opposite sides of the, and it was a fabulous game. Now we saw it only from your perspective because you were casting, so we saw what and we had to infer what was going on from the
Yeah.
other side, but it looked like you guys were done. Then all of a sudden you started just popping out priests like crazy, and it was having the desired effect. You had your walls up, but the micro cost,
Microcops.
the,
The
the, the amount of mental cycles and clicking that you had to do to manage two different fronts, a western
two
front and an
different
eastern
fronts.
front,
That was
with like
so
a
disastrous. It
with
was
like
so
a dozen
Titanic.
priests on either side. You couldn't do anything else. You couldn't focus on keeping your walls up. You couldn't do. So yeah, I'm not talking about that type of complexity.
Yeah, because that was too much. I
That's too
bit
much.
off way too much than I could chew. I should have made just like the 10 priests. But I had to, and then I couldn't stop. And then because I had them, I couldn't stop using them. Oh man, it sucked. I really messed that game up. I feel like we
But
could
it
have
was
won
fun to
if I
watch.
had elephants prepared on that left flank. For those at least one side of legions, I had a couple armored ellie ready for those. Oh man, that would have been a totally different game.
Yeah, it was funny because after the game, he was like, "Well, that was a game nobody had any fun in because Memo was like, I wanted to quit. I was getting hammered. I was getting hammered. I think it was Hutchins or somebody had like kept hitting him with scouts and scouts and scouts and scouts, over and
Hmm.
over again. And you're like, yeah, I didn't have any fun because I was getting ready. And again, you probably didn't see the comment, but as a specter, I said, oh, somebody won. The viewers did because it was a treat to watch.
I
It
saw
was fun
that
to watch.
comment. I saw that comment. I read more than I can react to.
Oh, I
Hard
know.
to hard to react to every
But
comment.
but I'm not talking about that level of difficulty. And maybe difficult. Maybe I'm choosing the wrong words here. What I'm saying is, it's easy to fall into that pattern,
Hmm.
and it's more difficult, not necessarily to micro, but it's more difficult to stop and say, okay, instead of just pumping out another series of, you know, whatever unit you're doing, copy, CA, CAV, whatever. Maybe what I really need to do here is build some of these siege factories and build a couple of stone throwers so that I can break those walls down, right? I can get in there, and that doesn't take a lot of micro, but it does mean that you have to kind of get out of that just pump more and send them to the front line kind of mode of playing.
So it's very rare that I'm in a game. So this is gonna refer back to last week's quote of the week, in which we talked about, or quote of the day, right? Our last week quote was regarding, if your opponent kind of fortifies a position, you need to look at other opportunities that investing in that fortification your opponent did, like that investment they did, you need to find ways at which where did they spend resources to invest, right? Like wait, what weaknesses did they open, right? What weaknesses did they open for you to kind of best engage? Which is why combined arms, like in theory it makes sense, right? In a perfect game it makes sense, right? In which everyone's perfectly walled, in which all that things. But I think there's so many mistakes that oftentimes like if I'm Assyrian and you made this example and you said that at the expert level this happens less. Well, I'd say at the expert level it happens more, right? I'd say the higher level you get, the more people just make one unit, right? People just make the unit that their civ is good with because they know how to A, exploit it, and B, you don't need combined arms to win the game. You just need numbers, right? I feel like it's at its core, Age of Empires becomes a what numbers game, right? And what the Civ bonuses do and what the different units do is adjust the numbers, right? There's the big impacts, right? The high risk and low rewards, or the high risk high reward, like heavy cats, right? It's one unit that can in one shot kill 20, right? So it's kind of like this. It plays heavily in the numbers game, but compies are kind of the opposite, right? They're really low risk. It's super low risk to make a bunch of compies. Same with CA. As soon as you go to a melee unit, there's an additional risk of can I hit the enemy, right? Right? Is there a wall in the way? But it's like when you consider like what the best of anything is, I
Well,
don't know. I feel like
it kind of
falling into
bleeds
that
in.
rut just happens.
Can we bleed into your next, flow into your next one here, the best counter to mass minnows, because that's kind of an example
To
where I
mass
would
minnows,
argue,
it's a school of fish.
yeah, mass oxymoron, mass
It's funny
minnows.
because
But
assistance here says that the best counter to mass compies is flanking,
see,
and
I think the best counter to mass minnows is catapults, and it is so hilarious.
minnow
What
compies is catapults.
is catapults? If you land one,
Harsh
if
disagree.
you land one catapult hit on that, you're gonna kill. But it was like the one who was it. In fact, it was Assistance's game against Sissoko across that bridge.
Oh,
Remember
that.
they had a catapult,
Oh,
and
where I
you
have
counted
the
what was it, 18 CA that died?
18.
If that was Minnow Compi's function, it could have been 30,
So are you?
right?
So hold on. The question. So we jumped the gun and we moved on from the previous question into the next one, which is fine. We can move.
Well,
We can move on.
well, let me frame it up before we fully transition to this. So, if you're if player A is Assyrian and player B is uh, um, say it's Phoenician copy or Mace copy, or it's more difficult if it's Minnow copy, right? Because they get the extra range.
Well, the question has been a copy, but
Okay,
continue.
so but I'm just talking about. That's why I said it's sort of straddling these two. But if what I'm saying is if you're a Civ that doesn't have copies,
I didn't
that's what I
like
think
that
this is.
phrasing.
Oh, what's that?
Continue. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So if you're a Civ that doesn't have copies, so you're CA
All
Civ,
right.
right? So uh, and then you're fighting a Civ who has gone copies, and you just keep doing the same thing over and over. Yeah, it's like the one that ultimately is going to win is the one that's better at microing and can focus on dancing their units and keep their eco up. So it becomes a war of attrition. Somebody eventually starts their army starts diminishing because they can't replace it as well as the other guy, etc. But if you were to maybe throw a few stone throwers into that mix, then if you don't need very many stone thrower hits to land on massed compy minnows to and I'm not talking about, oh, I got to have one, because obviously if one shows up, the copies all stop shooting the CA. They focus on the stone thrower, the catapult, and it dies. But if you have
Mhm.
5 or 6 come up, all you need is 1 or 2 hits with that, and boom, there goes 10, 20 copies. And meanwhile, the CA continue to shoot.
So For 10, 20 compies, are you willing to lose 5 stone throwers? I think you said 4 to 5.
Well, that's what you bring to the front. I think then but the result of that is your CA may now dominate until the remaining copies. So it's not just those 20 that died in the volley, it's the whole
It's the
army now has
swing,
died.
right? Well, the the counter to that concept is that when you invest in those in the workshop, because we're talking your example, I'm just going to talk about your example only, is you're saying that you're going CA, so you're going to invest in a workshop. That's going to hurt your wood income, right? um or that's going to be a hit to your wood count, right? Not hurt your income, right? It's going to, you're talking about using your precious wood, right? Not for farms, not for more vills, or not for farms, not for more TCs, not for more ranges. You're instead going to invest that in a siege workshop, and then make siege some more wood, and then the additional cost of gold. So now you have to be on gold, whereas before CA don't cost gold. So now now you're going to be directly influencing your potential wood income for what seems to me not necessarily a super worthwhile trade, right? Because so you're talking about, if this lands, then we dominate the fight. I would say look at it in the reverse. If we don't build this, if we don't invest in this unit, what do we have? Well, we have, all the wood from the range, all the wood from the workshop, all the wood from the first stone thrower, and then the subsequent ones, because you mentioned several. All the gold now being transferred back into wood, because we never put the vills on gold in the first place. If we're Assyrian, for example, we would never need gold in this fight. So now we're talking significant increase in our potential, like by base resource, by value of resource, right? And our potential number of CA. The question is, would you? You said you hated this question, but would you rather have, with the context of you already have an established CA army, is how you kind of framed it, and then there's an established Minoan compy army, and that's it. And you're saying you would prefer to invest your resources in stone throwers over flooding more CA onto the map, into the grinder, if you will. Is that
Well,
what you're saying? Like, because I think the
clear,
cost.
clearly it's situational dependent. If you're short on wood already, then the idea of building siege factories and then siege units on top of that doesn't make sense. If you're short on wood and you're a CA civ, like uh, uh, Assyrian or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Eggy or whatever, then you're probably better off building a gold unit like Cav that can absorb a lot of compy arrows while the CA continue to shoot, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if they don't take the Cav out, the Cav really mows through compies if they get in close. So you got to make a choice now. Do you focus the Cav, or do you continue to focus the you know the CA that are coming in? And if you're short on wood, then that's really not costing you. It's
Mm-hmm.
costing you food, but it's the gold. You probably have gold anyway because you probably have
Right.
a couple of guys on gold to make sure that you get the upgrades, because you always want to make sure you get those upgrades, etc. And you could use that for something. I just think that the combo is going to be in a lot. And again, it's situationally dependent, but I think in a lot of cases, the combo army is going to be the powerful one.
So I just have to. I still think about it. I'm still thinking about it, because I don't know. When I think about it, there's a couple concepts here that I feel like you
Okay,
mentioned something. You said
go
something
the
that
priest
confused
route.
me.
Go the
You confused me about something, which is, if you're short on wood, then you should do gold, right? Like, there's some logic here that just, I feel like, needs to be addressed, right? Um, a CA civ, by definition, Assyrian and Hittite, is always short on wood. If you're not always short on wood, you're misplaying. You're making major mistakes, right? Like if you're right, it's the same thing. Like if you have more than 3 units queued up at every military building, stop queuing. Like cancel one at each, right? And then build 5 more military buildings, right? And then keep queuing, right? Like that's there's there's this concept of product like efficient production is is if is slightly less but almost as valuable as efficient fighting, right? um it could even be more valuable depending on how you look at it, right? Because at some point efficient production needs to become a um just it's a mantra, right? You need to keep producing, you need to take your ranges and always be producing, right? And that should always be stretching your economy thin, right? Like, which is why it's not a matter of, oh, you're floating wood, so you build a workshop. Obviously, if you're floating a ton of resources, you should do everything that you possibly can, right? But that's the difficulty, is you're limited by how much you can click. So when we're talking about like this kind of hypothetical, obviously it's a hypothetical, but it's also very practical because it's something that happens every game almost, right? In a bronze war, especially in this inland Hittite tournament that we're running right now, the fight of the Hittite. We're seeing it constantly. As someone who's played on this setting competitively a couple times, I mean, it's really tough to look at your resource count and your vil count and your production and say, all right, now's the time for a workshop, right? Like, I can't even, like, it has to be, it's very specific situations. Maybe I
Well,
could agree to
remember,
the on Fight of the Hittite, on that setting, the inland Hittite setting. I can understand workshops when the center is walled and you're playing passively, right? When if there is no active combat, but take like any like literally take any of Memo's games as an example. Just not his tournament games because he hasn't played any yet for this series. But have you been watching his stream recently? He's been playing the setting a bunch. Now they are always fighting with CA, right? The numbers are always close. He had this series against Morik the other day, and it was yesterday, I think, or the day before, maybe. Yeah, yesterday, and it was superb, right? Because what you witnessed is the perfect execution of economy balance and army production by 2 players, and the reality became the hill placement, who microed better, and exactly you have to exactly spending wood before wood can be accumulated, as assistants just said, is extremely important, right? You notice that you have 200 wood, you build another range, right? Or you start building farms, right? You don't let your resource counts get out of control, because as soon as you do, your opponent has the upper, if assuming equal ground, your opponent will be using the resources to win the battle immediately, right? And if they win the battle immediately, this game has a snowball effect, right? Where as soon as you're 10 CAs down, it's like the same thing with camping the ranges back in Assyrian Ashes. Camp the ranges, as soon as the production's shut off for even like 30 seconds, the opposing player, right, just makes 2 pumps of CA for free, and then all of a sudden, just like that, you have a significantly larger army and you win the game. The same concept can be applied to your economy management, which is why I disagree with your statement about, oh, just make cav if you're short on wood. Like, it's not that simple. Then you're suggesting that you're mining gold, which means against a good opponent, an equal opponent, if you will, you've lost, right? You don't have the numbers on the front line, right? That's just a fact.
well, so wasn't it the game that I called the Battle of the AIs? Remember that game between you and Memo in Oasis? It went on for like an hour and something and went to
Oh, I
Iron.
wish one of us had recorded that. Yeah, but
Right?
yeah,
You remember
neither of
that?
us were
Didn't
streaming.
that one end with catapults in your base? Am I thinking of the right game? Did that one not end with catapults in your base?
So for the listeners here, talking about back in Duel in the Desert, Memo and I played kind of just a match offline, not offline. Obviously, we were online, but off stream and everything. We were just playing, and it ended up being maybe the most competitive game I've ever seen or played in. Remember when I just straight up mirrored each other. We had trench warfare with slingers for maybe 40 minutes. Ended up getting to iron eventually. Both players did. Memo was a little bit faster, and eventually, I was making slingers all throughout the Bronze Age against him. He was doing horse archers because he ironed first. Then we both went camels. I went broadswords. We had
Stone throwers came out as a
stone throwers.
counter to slingers.
Both players had stone throwers eventually. He had stone throwers first. So you're bringing this up because you're seeing equal resources and equal player potential. I hesitate to agree with that. You're seeing a situation in which one day in one game I was able to play at the level of Memo, and we had a good game that was even, and he used what you're quoting as combined arms. So I think a big thing to note about that is keep in mind he bronzed 10 minutes earlier than me. I was forced to keep going slingers, right? I didn't have he didn't go CA because I kept making slingers, right? He was making CA and I was destroying them because I literally had 100 slingers on that line for a long time. It was around 100, I think, right? Um, so it's like, I see your point now. You're saying
When
in
he
this.
introduced the stone throwers, that line of slingers started to go down substantially. Then you hit bronze, and then you started to match some of the things that he was.
I was saying
But
I did camels to
right,
counter him.
so but my point is that it changed the tide of that battle, because I think if he now, granted, it was Sumerian, and Sumerian has a faster fire rate for the stone throwers, but he could have just sit there and continued to do the standoff, and eventually somebody would have won and somebody would have lost. But he changed the game up, and then when you started to build stone throwers to counter them, he had gotten in towards your base and you couldn't do anything. I mean, the building started going down and it became a
Well,
domino
at that
effect.
point, it was catapults. I was making
Well,
catapults and
then
he
it
was
was
making
catapult,
catapults.
right? But well, stone throwers into catapults, but the point's the same, right? That whole game could have just been nothing but a bunch of CA transitioning into horse archers, and may the best man win after a while. But these other
Well,
units
if we're
to
gonna
kick
be talking
butt.
about, if you want me to be honest about that, then we're talking about a very detrimental position for the game because that was all brought about because slingers were so valuable, just at an absurd rate, right? Like you saw, I mean, you watched the game. I mean, I was making slingers for like 10 minutes, 10 whole minutes, and Memo couldn't fight. Well, he could obviously, he could fight them, but he was losing ground slowly. Even with the stone throwers, he was losing ground. You're forgetting that he made stone throwers in the Bronze Age, and then I was still making slingers. 10 minutes later, I hit bronze, and he was still in losing ground. Right, like it was. I pushed up to his TC by that point. I hit bronze, got the bronze shield, started having a good fight. I think. I think the important part about that story, though, is I see your point about how having equal resources, but this was a unique situation because as soon as you introduce a tech disparity, then of course I agree, right? He made stone throwers because I was still tool age. I didn't have a counter to stone throwers. Like I couldn't. My only
Okay,
counter to him was micro, and it worked. Like he didn't win the
let,
game with the
let me
stone
give you
throwers.
another setup.
He did
Let me give
not.
you another.
I'm good. Okay.
All right, so you're both CA civs, and you both got a lot of wood, right? And you're having this, it's like what happens in D3, whatever, right? Or the Ashes in Assyria thing. And, eventually you can begin to see when you have 125 vills on each side, how fast they're burning through even a large forest. And if it's a stalemate back and forth in the middle, you can see that run rate's going to lead to a problem. The answer may be, before you get into a desperate wood situation, you then transition to another unit. You start building cav. to complement your front line. Yes, it's going to take an investment into stables, and some of those 125 bills are going to have to be pulled off to be put onto gold, that sort of thing.
Mm.
But if you can hold the line to the point that the wood begins to run out, if you have an established infrastructure to pump out those calf, and the other guy can't replace them because the wood is beginning to diminish. I think you're sort of anticipating. That's why I said the whole thing is situational dependent. You or I could set up a scenario
Yeah, yeah.
where either one of these things is either the right or the wrong answer. My original point, though, was that I think a lot of people just immediately gravitate towards I'm a Syrian, I build CA, and I'm going to build CA until I die or can't build anymore, right? Or I get to iron and it's going to be, the one thing. And I think sometimes,
It's funny because we see that. I mean, I'll agree with you on that. That's what people get kind of locked in on. That is when you see it all the time on Conti team games when someone's Assyrian or Hittite. They always make CA even because it's inevitable that they get slinger rushed, right? Inevitable. A Hittite or a Hittite or Assyrian player, everyone, they say, oh, this guy's the Assyrian player's at 4 o'clock. Someone sling him, right? It happens. Somebody drops 3 barracks and just starts pumping slingers into there and says, what are you gonna do, right? It's an inevitability with that matchup, right? Eventually the slingers are gonna slow that player down either hopefully long enough for the rest of the team to overcome the situation, or B, eventually you can out micro for long enough and build enough CA to maybe fight the slingers, right? Um, and what do we see 9 times out of 10? Instead of trying to go cav, instead of trying to go melee chariots, I see players always go CA into slingers. And you could say that's only an expert. Experts would never make that kind of thing, but no, 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 no. I've seen Memo do it. And the thing is, they pull it off. They pull off the counter, right? Because you think +8 damage to slinger or to CA would be enough for the slinger to compete. Well, as soon as you add range and speed as a factor, the experts just micro, right? They just use the army effectively and they don't fall to that mistake, right? They just don't die to the situation. Which is why at the same time that I see your point about not getting stuck, okay, so my point here is you said that we could each construe situations in which combined arms is better or sticking with one unit. I say I would prefer it if combined arms was the go-to choice. But I think based on the evidence that I've seen of multiple, not even multiple, all the games I've casted, the number of times in which it's won by just a single unit type or maybe a second, like if consider axe into slinger 2 units. I don't know if I would. I'd call that just the tool roster as a single unit. If I had to. Like I'd say
well,
9.5 times out of 10 games are won with someone doing that. And you could say that it's situationally. I would say yes. It just happens to be that the situations in which combined arms are better are far less frequent, right? Those situations are rarities. They're rare situations, right? Like I think that's something to keep in mind with that, which I think points back to the very beginning of this whole conversation. This big derailing question from the best counter to mass minnow compies is a mass of any one unit is just typically the best thing because it's a numbers game, because the situations in which that's not the case
well,
is very rare,
I mean,
right?
if
That's
I
my
could
point.
pick the one unit, what I want is I want a Sumerian or a Hittite heavy cat with ballistics and extra range. And I want that thing to just land and splat like a, a whole section of the enemy army.
Hmm.
And if you've got a half a dozen of them, or you've got 10 of them, and you're fighting 50, 60, 70 compies, I mean, a few splats, and I guess the thing is, you know, maybe to close this kind of part out is I find it really elegant to watch when it happens. When the guy does a really, really fast axe rush. He's Persian and he had good hunt in the beginning, and he's got one of those 6 minute click ups, and he's in his enemy with
Hmm.
axers, but the guy either sees it coming or manages to he's got really easily wall up, so he sacrifices some bills, but he's able to wall up in a nice place, and the guy immediately recognizes that and switches to slingers, or he comes in with a tranny. In a The transport is another type of unit, and another. It's like when Soygia, I think it was Soygia, did it in one of the very first tournaments. So it's like, oh, there's water there. I know what to do. When I get these guys, I'm gonna build a tranny across this tiny little lake and go over, right? And it's they think outside of the box, and they say, you know what? There are a lot more tools in this toolbox than 10 different types of screwdriver. There are other things in here. There's hammers in here, and
Hmm.
we've got all sorts of different you know wrenches and things that we can use. And when you see a situation, you say, "This is the tool for I need for this situation, and this is gonna help me," as opposed to just brute forcing your way in with you know uh, just that many more CA or something. I find it really elegant and neat to watch.
As much as I agree, so personally, I also find it very elegant and neat to watch. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. It just so happens that sadly, like I will say sadly, I think the balance of the game, the meta of the game, whatever you will, is such that unit spam is simply more effective. And if that weren't the case, like again, in situations that expectation can be broken. Of course, it's not a rule, it's not a law of Age of Empires, right? It's just the norm. It is what's the tendency, the habits of the players. It's just going to happen. That was a weird way to say it, but there are those rare situations in which, yes, it gets kind of mixed up, and that's when you see that workshop or that transport ship, and it's used perfectly. The execution is right. It's not too much of a strain. My stream just went offline. Oh boy, I just lagged. Okay, sorry, we're back. Something just happened to my stream upload. I hope that's okay on your guys end. Let me know in the chat if there's any issues with that. Back to it though. um yeah, I'm dropping a bunch of frames, whatever. Weird, I guess, because there's not like video, so you guys don't see like the big issues. Well, there's video of me, I but there isn't like that. Anyway, I think those situations are very elegant, and when they arise, it does take an expert, I think, to properly a cap no, no properly a recognize the situation, b understand what they need to do, and then c execute the plan, and then d like continue to micro the execution of that plan, right? You know what I mean? I think it's a four-stage process for experts. And that's why it takes an expert, right? It's a four-stage process to and why it is so elegant when those situations do arise, which they do, right? I'm not trying to fault the game or anything, right? Like they certainly do arise. It just to me it seems that mass units tend to be just far superior, like especially in like a team game, right? In a team game, I can't think of the number of I can count on my hand the number of times in the past maybe 5 months total where I've made more than just one unit. I
Well, in a
never I
team game,
never do.
you may not have to, because you may, as a team, have the Rainbow Army, right? I mean, if you've got a Yam and you've got an Assy, right, and then you've got a Minnow,
Hmm.
well, guess what? You're going to have Compy CAs and
Cap,
Cav,
right?
right? So why would you want to? I mean, that would probably, in a lot of cases, be a nice combination army anyway, right?
Well, it's like the reason. Yes, I mean that's a very good example, but at the same time, but that's all general units, right? Like you said before, right? The thing would be, when did I ever need a specialty unit, right? No one's sitting there massing catapults and priests just for me, you know. They're not using that just so they can come help me. I mean, maybe, rarely though. It's such a rare thing, right? Like when I made like the Oasis game we referred to earlier, where I made a bunch of priests. You know, we lost that game, right? I lost that game in some ways. Well, in many ways, I lost, and then I also feel like I let everyone down by going the specialty unit instead of the generalist unit. I could have gone just Ellie's, right, and had a great time, and just spammed, killed a bunch of legions with it, and had a great time, But we didn't, right? I went priest to counter a couple Ellie's, and then legions killed me, right? So it's like generalist units, I feel, have far more value than specialty units do in this game. And that could be why they see very little value. And I think if we're going to relate this back to other podcast discussions and just the balance of the game in general, I think with the recent patches, scouts, by my, in quotes, my, your, whatever your definition was, scouts just became a generalist unit recently, when they were previously a very unique specialty unit, right? Their numbers and the way they worked just got changed so that they are now, they're
Well, they're now a generalist unit, right?
exactly. And now you see people who literally ride or die with the scouts. They Rohan themselves to the grave. And it's a viable strategy, which is what's so wild about it?
All right. Well, we should probably get on to the quote of the day.
Oh,
But I will say,
sorry.
but I will say that the worst thing you could do would be to build an army of specialty units, because they are so vulnerable, right? I mean, if all you built was catapults, or if all you built was priests,
Mhm.
right? Or all you built was, I mean, it's very, but it's true in life, right? I mean, we need a lot more dentists than we need brain surgeons. But if you're the guy that needs brain surgery, how many dentists would you trade it for? Right? I mean,
Mm,
but um, so anyway,
that's a good analogy. That's a classic ROM analogy. Can't be mad about it.
so there you go. But anyway,
That's a good one.
viewers will come up with the, listeners rather than viewers here. Hopefully there was something in that
Yeah, we just
discussion
went on
that
a tangent.
sparked some thought. Maybe somebody will think about that and say, "Oh, I have something interesting," and something will emerge from it. But
Yeah, let us know if you have any thoughts on that kind of stuff, because either in the YouTube comments or here right now on the Twitch. I mean, I read everything you guys say. I really do like. I do like reading it. And again, this whole podcast is basically just Rom and I chatting about stuff. So we always like. I mean, if you bring up a good enough point, it could very easily become next week's discussion topic. And we go on tangents, so I understand if it's a little hard to follow at times. I think it should be pretty simple though. We talk pretty, I would say, pretty um like concise. No, not concisely. We ramble quite a bit, but like it's there's
this
a
this this
there's a
brings up
structure.
another
There's a
quote.
structure.
It's a quote I have to bring up, and you can look up the details. Well, in fact, assistants may know it, but no, no, no. This one isn't going to kill you. This is the quote about Winston Churchill when he was away from home, and he's like, he apologizes to his wife at the beginning of the letter and says, I have to apologize for the
I
length
know
of
this
this
one.
letter, but I
I
didn't
know
have
this.
enough time to write a short one, right?
Yeah.
And it's a great quote, because when you think about it, you're like, yeah, to really have an interesting, concise description of something is a lot more difficult than to just blather on. And so the thing that I find difficult here is that we have to keep ourselves to, people are thinking, oh my God, they've like kicked the hoplites and the compies to death in this call, but this is short for Winston and I. We're
We go
containing
on
the,
for hours, man.
yes, we have.
Hours.
We've had calls that go on for a long time, debating, particularly balance calls and things like
Oh,
that.
as soon as we talk about anything bound specific. So you'll notice in our discussions here in the podcast episodes, almost every week I'm we are, or me, we're going to try to focus one of our questions specifically on game balance, because I know it's our favorite topic to talk about. It's something I love discussing, is Age of Empires, its balance, how it flows, right? Like, just like the gameplay mechanics versus theory. Like, that's something that I feel is very appreciate not appreciated. I think a lot of people appreciate it, but there's no real forum of for this kind of discussion. Like, there's no real, like, I don't know. I like to say I'm in cahoots with a bunch of the experts, right? I know all the experts of this game. I don't know what they think about a lot of things except for their biggest of opinions, because like you said, without comms, back to previous section, without voice communications, everything has to be efficient in how you communicate with your teammates, right? So when we're in game, right, just playing, it's like, I don't know anything other than, ah, man, slings are broken, right? That's all I know that a lot of people agree with, right? And that's about it, right? Everything else, like this kind of detailed discussion, just there is no medium for it. Which is why I hope that it brings some sort of value, at least into our insights. Like, if you do appreciate those, you get a glimpse at it every week. Um, because I think about this stuff a lot. Like, I do really like considering the game and strategically, because it helps your game. Because the more you think about something when you're not doing it, the easier it is to remember it when you are doing it. Does that make sense? At least I believe that. But anyway, we could go to our quote of the day, like you said.
Well, another one is the best way to learn something is to teach it.
Mm.
And in a sense, it's not that we're teaching anybody here, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a coherent
Mm.
thought from experiences, and the process of doing that, I think, helps to really crystallize and focus what it is you're trying to do in a way that maybe wouldn't happen without it. So I think the discussion helps us, but I think it's another interesting quote or adage or whatever. But you should try it sometime. Anyway, all right. What's the quote of the
All
day?
right, this is your Christmas gift for this day. Quote of the day. So we're back to Sun Tzu, and this is gonna relate heavily to age here, so I'm excited. So, fighting with a large army under your command is no wise different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signal. Now, this is interesting. So, before you react to this, which I'm sure you're thinking about it right now, so I'm just going to talk for a second, is, to me, this is all about micromanagement, right? This is all about the micro of Age of Empires. How can we apply this? All about micro. It's all about army control. And I think this is something I see a lot of players lose a grasp on as the game progresses. And that might be lack of practice, lack of expertise, lack of ability, potentially, lack of um and but foremost of all those is, I think, lack of understanding, or lack of knowledge, if you will, which are, for humans, that's the easiest to fix, is lack of understanding and knowledge, right? People learn way faster than they um, can, like, mechanically learn, right? Like, muscle memory, right? I think the goal, the real success behind Age of Empires expertise lies in um, mechanical knowledge and mechanical expertise, rather than just understanding the fundamentals, right? Um, Things like army control aren't something that you can't pause and think about it, so it has to be reactive, and it has to happen instinctually, which is hard, which is ultimately the hardest thing to kind of like ingrain in your playing style, right? But with that comes the understanding that you won't get something. It's much easier to make something instinctual if you understand what it is you're trying to make instinctual, right? If you understand the goal and where you're trying to go. And I think this quote applies very specifically to Age of Empires, as in, a lot of people understand the value of pulling elephants and microing gazelle under their TC. A lot of people understand, saturating wood lines. A lot of people understand Not letting your slingers get hit by axers and pulling them back. A lot of people understand microing chariots. What a lot of people don't know, like dancing their chariots on the front line to avoid shots, right? That's kind of like the bread and butter of Age of Empires playing, right? Those are all things that micro are like micro level. I would say relating to this quote would be fighting with a small one, right? Um, However, with 250 pop games, when you get to a large army, I think a lot of people, myself included, oftentimes neglect neglect those small little details in favor of large sweeping changes. And relating back again to what Rami said earlier, just because something is easier doesn't mean it's better, right? And for some people, it might be that the ease of use behind the like attack moving your army across the map is easier, so it's in theory, if not doing that is too hard and you do worse with it, then it's better to do the easier thing, right? Sometimes that's the case, but I would argue with Age of Empires, it, as my friend Memo always says, it always comes down to army control. There are very few situations in which an army poorly controlled will beat an army well controlled. It's very rare, right? Like that is hyper situations, right? Like a small choke point, unavoidable conflict, right? If you're in that situation, you've already lost the game, so you might as well quit. So it's pretty rare to be in that position. So what I'm talking about specifically here is when your army is too large to do all these small details for, don't give up on doing those small details. Don't give up on dancing your units. You can still dodge arrows that have ballistics, right? Like there's ways to do these things, and the players that can are going to be the players that win. The players that do, rather. A lot of players can do a lot of things, but the players that do it and remember to do it are the ones that are going to win fights. When you think you're going to win, you just see a numbers advantage late game and you just send all your units and you just go have fun. And then you have to go micro another fight. You start building walls, you set up trade, you reseed all your farms, you do all XYZ. And then you look back and oh boy, your army lost. You're like, well, how'd that happen? Last I looked, I had 3-1 advantage there, and you realize you forgot. There's a catapult in the back, and that guy just sent it in, and he wasn't even paying attention. He's like, "Oh, how'd I win that?" And you're both just sitting there wondering. It's because those small signs and signals that you need to institute into your micro, so very important, and that's what I got from this quote. Um, not saying that that's not saying that's a mantra of my life. I certainly am guilty of using just broad sweeping approaches to the game when we get late game situations and stuff. Or like mid late, like when I have a bunch of CA, I just go. I stop microing. I just send them in. I'm just like it's a numbers game now. But then I play someone like Memo or Morik or Cool, and they're gonna not do that. They're gonna focus their army, right? And that's what elevates them, right? So the closer you can get to doing that, the better you're gonna do, right? It's not just it's not a light switch. It's incremental steps to succeeding in micro and macro at the same time. So I think it's important for everyone to kind of like take this in and realize that micro is always going to matter in age one. What are your thoughts on this quote, Ram?
Well, two things come to mind. The first thing that popped in my head was a large army that is not under control, meaning that I mean you're controlling it based on signs and signals. So you're adjusting to events as they're occurring and unfolding. But an army that doesn't do this, not really under control, is it's kind of a mob. It sounds like it's not really an army, and a mob can certainly do a lot of damage, but a very well controlled army, a la Napoleon or a la
Mm,
Erwin Rommel in World War II with blitzkrieg tactics and those types of things. Um, uh, um, and you can see it with modern day warfare. I mean, the command and control ability down to, you know, individuals, um, is just so much more powerful. So the first thing that I thought of is, okay, yes, I mean, fighting with a large army, but treating it as an army, and leveraging the signs and signals and the development of the battle as you can, means it's not just a mob out there. But the second thing, as I was thinking about it and you were talking, was uh, when um, when I was getting my MBA, one of the professors had said something that had stuck with me for many, many years, and that was that in corporations, any resource that's in abundance
Hmm.
will be
It
abused.
will be abused. You told me
It,
that like a year ago, and that's stuck with me
yes,
for many, many months.
and it's true, and I've seen this, and it's not just in corporations; it's just with people in general. Anything that you have um, in abundance will either be carelessly wasted, or in a worst case is abused. And it's usually when your resources are scarce that people give um, really deep thought into how can I get the best out of it. So if money is tight, people figure out, hey, hey, I can turn these bottles in for deposits, or I can, maybe I can shave off some of my electric bill, or um, when it comes to water, I mean, if you happen to live in a place that has a lot of water, and people just, they kind of use it, waste it, don't do anything with it. You go to other cultures where water is very scarce, and they treat it as a precious commodity. um, and so when you get to the early part, and you see this play out in the games that we watch, when you have a very small army, I mean, when you're rushing and you have 5 or 6 actors, I mean, you do not want to lose any one of those. You don't. It's 20% of your army, right? um, as the game gets later and later and the armies get larger and larger, people get sloppier and sloppier with them, right? Now, part of it could be due to the micromanagement aspect of it, but I think a lot of it is just relates to, I have so many here, I can afford to lose a bunch of them, right? And yeah, I fear the Russians all in World War II, and I'd have to look up that Russian general's name again. But the Russian general, one of the Russian generals said, as we march forward and we march to a landmine, we continue on as if it doesn't exist, right? I guess it's the fastest way across, and if you have infinite soldiers, it doesn't matter. Um, but if you're fighting against a skilled opponent, and it's not an overwhelming advantage that you have in the point of the game, the the expert player, and we, you mentioned many of them that we know here and watching the tournaments. They don't waste stuff. They don't waste stuff when they throw that army in there. They don't let it just randomly shoot at pits and TCs and whatever the item wants to shoot at. They focus the fire of that very large army
Hmm.
to what they want to attack, and they react to the differences. You can see how quickly, like, oh, here comes another army, and we'll stop shooting the buildings and focus fire on the returning army, or they're moving over to a hill, so I have to, there's all these things that we call it micro, but they're judgments that are coming into play. And even though the army is large, they don't abuse it. But that's the tendency. Any resource that you have in abundance tends to get abused or wasted.
That's that quote that.
Zukov, assistants, you need to be in this podcast every week, because every time we talk about stuff and things come to mind, he's like, "Oh yeah, Ben Franklin, the Zukov," and yeah, it's like
It's really funny that he
you
knows that.
you
I
have a
didn't
wealth
even.
of knowledge,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, Zukov is the guy. Thank you. But anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
went
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because when I think about it, I don't even. I don't even know. Like this quote I think is so versatile, similar to your abundance quote that you always bring up, and not always actually, very rarely, but it seems very. Seems like it has a lot of applications that I didn't anticipate when you first told it to me, when you first educated me on that. Because it's interesting. I don't know. It's like
Well,
I guess
it might.
that is what I do because I certainly fall victim to it. As soon as I have a large enough army, I think, oh, I'll just see how they go. I see how they fare. I send them out there, and sometimes I micro it when I think it's going to be close. But like other times, I micro it. I don't know. Like I just let him go. I just send him off. I don't micro it, rather. I just send him off and let him go do their thing and hope for the best. And just say, like when I have hoplites, I just don't worry about it. I just or
Yeah,
armored Ellie. I just YOLO. They go where they want to go. I trust them, and I think that's why I think hoplites in armored Ellie going back once again to a two quotes two segments up. Armored Ellie and hoplites, man, they're the hoplite line, so including Centurions, right? Fully up to sense. Man,
nice assistance. Studied history, so you're not. Yeah, you don't have to repeat it.
that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but you see it. You also see it in utilization of wood and food and gold. The people
Mm.
that are floating a lot of that tend to not use it as wisely as they do when it's very precious. Um, and they'll just, you'll spam certain things. Um, I don't know. It's just, but and I'm guilty of all these things. And part of it is, uh, I can't micro that fast. I know things that I should do and try to, and do, but I'm just not as fast enough to do it. But um, that's a difference between being able to know what to do uh, and the person that knows what to do and is able to do it. You know,
Hmm.
uh, and that's why watching these excerpts is so much fun.
Yeah, it really is. Oh man, that was a that was a healthy discussion today. We had a lot of topics to cover. I certainly liked our set list. What did you think of this list?
Well, yeah, it was a nice list. I wish I could contribute more in the H2 piece, but I just don't have any knowledge or experience, with it to really dive into that one. But
Well, maybe after
uh,
the show match this week, if you're able to
yeah,
watch the Tattered Out show match that I'll be casting this on Saturday, if you're able to watch that, uh, then maybe you'll have some more insight and we could talk about it more next week.
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
I would
maybe.
love to get into it because even if you don't, we could do another like I think we could have like kind of an educational segment on just you know age one versus age two. What do you need to know? Because again, a lot of this audience, and I know you guys, you're age one players, you're age one like followers, and you love the game. And age two might be a foreign place. Maybe you're really familiar with it, in which case it might not be the most useful thing for you to listen to, but at the same time, you could contribute to something. I don't know. I think we could look forward to that next week potentially. Um, that being said, do you have any last thoughts here, Rum?
Just that the trajectory is, I don't remember the exact times, but I'm pretty sure the following statement is true. Um, Podcast one was X minutes. Podcast two was X minutes plus Y. Podcast three was X plus Y plus Z. And this is now X plus Y plus Z plus
A
A.
one, a sub
with all of those
a
being
sub one.
positive numbers.
Yeah, I should host an HDE and an H2DE tournament where players have to play both games. Man,
Oh, that's
assistants,
funny.
you're just
That's
going
funny.
wild here. You're getting out of control, man. You're
That's
getting out of
funny though.
control.
That's funny. That is funny because if
It
you
is a
got a
really good
point for
idea.
each one that you won, and you could win every DE, one game and lose every DE2 game and still not win the tournament. But yeah, it
Well,
would be
I
kind of
think
funny.
by default Tato would win
Oh yeah,
because
Tata
because
would
he's
just monster.
proven to be very solid at age one. What age one player could A never lose a game to him in age one and then B win any games against him in age two? None. No one. Maybe ACCM are cool. Could take games off of him. Even then I think the skill gap there is a bit there's a bit of one. Tato's like top 5 in the world for age two. Like he's a different beast. He's a machine. Anyway, guys, that's the end of this podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. I'll see you all at this time next week again. That's Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time, which is technically now 1 GMT, I believe. 1 GMT Friday. So it's just really early Friday if you're anywhere else in the world, I guess. But for us in the US, that's Thursday nights at 9. So thank you all for tuning in and have a good one. Bye bye now.
All right, take care, everyone.